Hello. Harry Smith had everything going for him. The first British quarterback in American college football, a star future, and a pretty Texan girl on his arm. But when Prince Harry collides with fate in a near-fatal accident, everything unravels. Tight Spiral has a mix of sport, suspense and romance, and I recently caught up with its author, Michael Gill. Hi Michael. Now, I've mentioned that the main protagonist of Tight Spiral is the first British quarterback in American college football. Can you tell us something more about him?
Yes, Harry Smith grew up in Cirencester, and that part of England had a lot of American Air Force bases, and his granddad actually became a coach with them. He befriended a lot of Americans. They taught him all the aspects of American football, and Harry would go and watch his granddad. But he actually never got really involved in the game. However, he did learn to throw the football, which is the name of the book, Tight Spiral, and could spin the ball extremely well. He then wanted to go to university and was looking in England when his granddad suggested he try to go to University of Texas. His granddad had moved to Austin with his job, and Harry thought, what a marvelous idea. Hot sunshine and beautiful city of Austin, Texas, and he was accepted, and actually becoming quarterback for the University of Texas was an absolute fluke that you will read in Tight Spiral. However, he did take them to the state championship, and he's actually the first British quarterback ever in the history of college football in the US.
The story isn't told solely from Harry's viewpoint though, is it? What can you tell us about the other major characters in the book?
The two main characters, besides Harry, are Amy Carrington and Ben Shannon. Amy Carrington comes from absolutely nowhere, only my imagination. But because I actually fell in love with the character, and she's 24 years old, I actually thought about this for quite some time and realized that I've got two fabulous sons, but I've never had a daughter. And I'm convinced she's the daughter I never had. And that's probably why I had so much fun with the character, and I really do admire her. And she's a lass from Leeds, which is quite close to where I'm from. Ben Shannon is a multimillionaire in Houston, Texas, and his only thing that he just cannot get, no matter how much money he has, is he can't buy an NFL franchise. And over the years, the NFL, through its draft system, has become the fairest sport in the world. And it's also become extremely profitable, and no one's going to give up a franchise for any kind of money. So he decided to look at trying to find a way to have a huge team in the UK. And because he was originally born in Leeds, and he'd read the stories about Leeds becoming the top city in the north, he chose Leeds and built a humongous dome and the team Leeds Cougars.
Well, we heard at the beginning of the podcast that Harry's actually involved in a serious accident, and so let's listen now to that moment when everything in Harry's life changes forever.
Harry woke suddenly. He glanced at the alarm clock. 5:45. His eyes, wide like a cat's at night, fixed intensely on the ceiling. He shivered and wondered why he had not checked the forecast yesterday. Heavy rain in this part of Texas always freaked him out. His only fear in Texas: tornadoes. The noise on the roof seemed more intense than normal. He quickly dressed and headed through the living room. He sat on the sofa, coffee in hand. He couldn't remember the last time he was up so early in the morning. He would have coffee, shower, and head down for training early, impress the coach. It had been almost 2 weeks since his last workout. Leading the University of Texas football team to win at the Cotton Bowl on New Year's Day had been totally incredible. Between the parties and TV interviews, he had not had a minute to himself. He was the first British quarterback ever to play in the USA, never mind winning a bowl championship. He thought about Austin, Texas, and how he'd made the right choice moving here. It was his granddad's idea. G-Pops, as he called him, lived here and had been his inspiration. He loved the heat, the people, and only wished to God it was not Tornado Alley. Would a twister follow the ice pellets? He shivered at the thought. He pictured the last one to hit near Austin, just a few miles north. Imagined the long arm appearing out of a dense cloud. "I will have some of that," it seems to roar. A village, trailer park, cows lifted up in a second and consumed in the violent twisting column of immeasurable power. Eaten up and discarded many miles away. Okay, enough about tornadoes. Think positive, he muttered and headed for the shower. 30 minutes later, outside his apartment, the parking lot was like an ice rink. The ice pellets had stopped and left a gleaming white carpet as far as the eye could see. He started up the pickup truck and walked around kicking at the ice. This is going to be fun, he thought sarcastically, while admiring his truck. I'll have to be careful, he thought when climbing back into the cab. These things are great, except light on the back end. Don't brake hard and I will be all right. Let's do this, he thought. He managed literally to skate out of the parking lot and down towards I-35. He entered the ramp and was 5 miles from the gym. He wished he'd not taken the highway. Cars and trucks were scattered on both sides of the road. He stared in amazement at the fenders hanging off vehicles, radiators steaming from cars ploughing into the barrier. There were so many vehicles sliding out of control. He heard a noise to his left, like a grating sound, coming nearer, louder. He took a quick glance. An 18-wheeler, out of control, coming at him, on him.
Michael, you were actually involved in a major road accident yourself, weren't you? Which I know had a very big impact on your life. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yes, it was actually August 8th, 1970. I think the last song I heard was All Right Now by The Free, and 2 lads on a motorcycle on holiday. So usually, especially in those days, it would be the rider's fault. On this occasion, thank goodness we had lots of witnesses. It wasn't. It was a chap, his first night on holiday, and he was drunk and driving and hit the 2 of us at about 60 miles an hour. I was in hospital for over a year, had 24 operations to save my right leg, which they did. My near-death experience, I've studied it over the years. I Google it on a regular basis. I'm so fascinated by it. For me, my coma was quite boring compared to Harry Smith's experience, but I do remember floating quite a lot, where I was looking down at the people in the room on a regular basis. How it's changed my life since is I found that I couldn't settle. It's probably why I ended up in Texas, but I was always wanting to be on the move and do something completely different. And what they say that it triggers your temporal lobe that people don't normally use, and it certainly has done something like that to me, because I can also have psychic feelings, but only with a few people, very few people. And it's only now that I think that I'm sort of calmed down and I know where I am, but certainly it changed my whole life and made me the person I am today, for sure.
Now, you coached American football for 3 years here in the UK. How did that come about?
Yeah, what I actually would like to also tell readers too is there is a true short story at the end after Tight Spiral, which is my year in American football, 1987. And what I did is I answered an ad in the paper in Cheltenham Spa, where I lived, for an American football team. Budweiser was sponsoring a humongous league, probably 280 teams across the UK, but not like the NFL. It was 4 Americans were allowed on the team. The rest had to be British. All the coaches were American, and when I read the ad, I wanted to be a coach because I'd read lots and lots of books that I'd ordered from the US. I watched Channel 4's show every week, Super Bowls. I stayed up till 4 in the morning watching the Super Bowls. And let's just say the Americans laughed when I got there and thought that I should be a player. And I said, no, my accident, my leg, I can't be a player. Anyway, I convinced them, and we had this amazing year. I never really thought the NFL would come to the UK. I always thought we'd have this smaller, not even semi-pro, but just this little bit of a passion for the game. And I think that's changed because now most of the bases that were American soil have gone. There's not too many Americans here.
Now, the action in Tight Spiral starts off in Texas before moving to Yorkshire in England, and those are both settings that are very familiar to you, aren't they?
Yeah, this need for me to always be on the move is I actually decided to go and launch a British product, alcoholic beverage product, for the whole of the US, based in Houston, Texas. And after that, I then actually went to work for quite a large brewery, which moved me to Austin. So Houston and Austin, I probably spent 4 years in Houston, 6 years in Austin. And obviously I grew up in Yorkshire. I tell a lot of people that Texans and Yorkshire people have so much in common. Fiercely independent would be one. I mean independent from their countries. They'd sooner be Texas, they'd probably sooner be Yorkshire. And on holiday, somewhat nervous and not necessarily friendly. But when you go to them, they are the best hosts on the planet, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, talking of Yorkshire, let's hear another excerpt from the book when we meet sports reporter Amy Carrington in Leeds.
Amy read her email message one more time. She'd interviewed for a writing position with the London fashion magazine last week. This was confirmation she had been successful, beating over 200 applicants apparently. Nice work, girl. It was more writing for their busy blog than outside assignments. However, it was better than reporting on dreary football games. Amy, office please, she heard from her boss. The guys were making a chopping motion to their throats. She stalked into the office, wondering what it could be now. I cut back my bloody expenses by over 50% last month. Sod it. I will take the new job offer in London, she immediately decided. Before she could sit down, her boss was up from his chair. Amy, I have a promotion for you. Not a pay increase until you've proven yourself. However, it's a good assignment and something you can get your teeth into. Right up your alley, really. It's about time. The arts? Music? Fashion? She asked. Her boss laughed. Stop being a twit. You are a sports writer, although for the next year there'll be some diversity with this assignment, and it'll give you time to research the game. A year? Boss, give me a break. I have footy games sorted in a week. Did you know we are the only English-speaking country in the world that calls soccer football? He said while looking at Amy over his glasses. Your new assignment is football. American football. Amy laughed, which was unusual for her in the workplace. When you pull yourself together, I'll give you the latest scoop. This came in a few minutes ago. One of the richest men in the world is buying the vacant piece of land in Pudsey. He's meeting with the mayor of Bradford in the morning. I just heard from my source. If he can convince Bradford to go with this deal, he'll announce his plans for a dome stadium to be built in time for next season. He apparently wants the stadium to be the best in Europe. The Leeds Cougars American football team is official and ready to play in the BFL next year. We need someone to cover this, of course. Amy Carrington, you will be our Cougar girl, he said with a chuckle. Well, thanks, boss. Fancy all my mates calling me the Cougar girl at 24 years of age. I will do it, but just to show my full commitment to the paper. Get to Bradford in the morning and make sure you get a quote from Ben Shannon. In the car, she sent an email to the fashion magazine. Thank you so much. However, I will have to decline your offer. I'm staying with the Yorkshire Gazette, she typed with a nervous feeling in her stomach.
Michael, there's a very moving dedication in your book. Could you tell us a bit more about that?
Okay, so J.J. Latore from Mystic, Connecticut, the United States, was my American football mentor and became my very, very close friend. Taught me everything you could possibly know about the game of football. And, we became very, very close. But that's not really the reason for the dedication. To go back to earlier this year in January, I was getting ready to board a plane to go to Yorkshire, where my father was critically ill in hospital. And the flight got cancelled because of the snow in the UK. And so I went home and I was very frantic trying to get on the next flight. And I get a phone call from Jenny Latore to say that JJ had a massive heart attack and has passed away. And I couldn't process that because he was 49 years old, in great shape, still coached football, still worked out. He was an incredibly special man that I didn't actually realize until I was trying to figure exactly what I wanted to say in the dedication. I didn't realize that when he was coaching me and all of these players, particularly the British players that were some were, in their 30s or 40s, This guy was 24 years old. And yet I looked up to him as like almost a father figure. But he had so much time for all the kids and all the British players, lots and lots of patience, and at the same time he had 2 new children of his own and pretty much a new wife. I just never realized until I thought about it that he was 24 years old. And the other thing that I'd like to say is that when I decided to write a novel, I believe that he is on my shoulder all the time as an inspiration. I don't think I could have stayed so focused for as long as I did, and all the bad times of when you have self-doubt, when you're writing and everything else, he would just perch on my shoulder and say, get on with it. Remember, when we were coaching football. And that's the reason I dedicated it to him.
Now, you've said that you believe NFL American football will be a top-watched sport here in the UK quite soon. What makes you think that, and how do you think it will happen?
Tight Spiral is extremely fiction. Factual? Not really, but could it be? So am I sort of hopefully predicting things because of my knowledge of the game? I hope so, and I can probably pat myself on the back because there's just been a new announcement, which was announced well after I'd written Tight Spiral. We have, or are going to have in the very near future, 2 NFL games at Wembley, both sellouts, 84,000 people. I would never have dreamed we would have had 2. I always thought we'd have 1, and they've just announced 3 in 2014. So if we look at now, there's 3 games at Wembley. American football came out of nowhere to be the 7th most watched sport, but I do think it will eventually be number 3. I will say that I'm pretty sure a team like Jacksonville Jaguars, who are here very soon playing the San Francisco 49ers, not having a good year, the Jaguars, but the owner is a chap named Mr. Khan, who is multimillionaire and cutting edge and gets things done. I think he's going to consider moving to London, or a team like him. Once there is a true London team, I think then it will be huge, because obviously we're British and we need something that's our own. So imagine the London Jaguars having a full NFL season, and some of the players on the eastern seaboard are saying, well, it's not much different flying to London as it would be to San Francisco.
Well, you've had an interesting career, and although Tight Spiral is your first novel, it isn't the first book you've written, is it? Could you tell us a bit more about your career and how it's led you to writing a novel?
Most of my career has actually been in the alcoholic beverage industry, and I moved to Canada in 1999 and immediately started a wine business, which has since become quite large with the help of my business partner, who's also a sommelier. My passion went towards single malt whiskey. The very first time I went to Scotland, it was just being there, and it made me want to tell stories. It made me want to write about whiskey. And so eventually I wrote a book in 2006 on whiskey. I tried to make it a little bit more cutting edge. I included food matching, which other people hadn't done in the past, and sort of an insight into my side of the industry, which is representing distilleries, wineries from around the world. I enjoyed writing the book, but I didn't think it was that much of a challenge because it's an area I know quite a lot about. And so I decided that the biggest challenge I could think was to write a novel.
As well as the sport, there's a romantic story that's central to the plot of Tight Spiral. I wonder if you could talk to us a bit more about this theme in the book.
Yeah, I got to say first that I thought that writing romance would be the hardest part for me, and it wasn't. It was actually quite easy, and probably, certainly not forced, because I do believe, as the story developed, that Harry and Amy should be an item. Again, Harry's my hero, and Amy's the daughter I never had. So it kind of made a lot of sense. I think at the beginning, Harry definitely needed Amy more than the other way around. I think that's exactly what Harry needed to bring him out of all the depressions he'd had from the near-death experience and didn't want to play football anymore. And as it develops, then I think Amy needed Harry because Amy is that, that 24-year-old Yorkshire lass that's all out, going for everything, and she might hurt a few people on the way, but she's driven. And I think Harry sort of balances her.
Well, in fact, let's hear the final excerpt now when Amy sees Harry for the second time.
What a sight! Amy had never seen exercise drills like this. She asked one of the coaches what was going on. Calisthenics, he replied. She would check that word on Google later. A coach shouted, "Jumping jacks!" and blew his whistle. She watched in amazement at 40 players, all in their full gridiron uniforms, doing a routine that looked more suited to dance, all of them together in unison. The coach yelled the next exercise in their routine was ups and downs. Amy was trying to recall if she'd ever seen anything like this one. They would go down on the ground, jump back up, now their bodies frozen like deer in the headlights. The only part of the body moving was their legs and feet moving fast like a tap dancer. She moved around the back of the players, ready to take interesting shots with her Canon camera from a variety of angles. This would be great for the blog. Suddenly she noticed a player wearing the 12 jersey, Harry Smith. His feet moved fast on the spot. Now, what a bloody gorgeous sight, his arse in those tight pants, she thought playfully. Oh, enough of all this. It's making me exhausted just watching them, she thought after 30 minutes of snapping shots and taking notes.
Michael, it's been a pleasure, and thank you for talking to us about your book, Tight Spiral. And you can buy Tight Spiral by Michael Gill from Matador's website at www.troubadour.co.uk. You can also find the book on all online bookshops, and you can order it from high street bookshops too. Thanks for listening, and happy reading.